All right, I think we're live. Good morning, everyone. This is Catherine Clement in Boulder, Colorado, and hosting for Samantha this week. She is celebrating a bundle of joy, her new grandson, Connor, and so we welcome him to our family and are just so happy for her. And also looking forward to this chapter, of course. I'm glad that you came to join us today or maybe in the future. We're actually reading the book Change Your Life, Change Your Thoughts by Wayne Dyer, and it's the Tao Te Ching, sort of broken up verse by verse. So we're on chapter 17, well, it's chapter 18, verse 17, which is a little confusing, but does anyone have the book actually that you can hold up? Because mine is on Kindle. If somebody could hold up the book, that would help. Everybody looks frozen to me. I hope that this is coming through okay. I was having some computer troubles earlier and last week. Thank you, Dan, for stepping in last moment. That was you did a great job last week. I just couldn't get the tech issues fixed. So anyway, we're on, if you go to SaturdayMorningMastermind.com, you'll see there's a blog post there, and if you scroll down past the blog post is the comment section. We would love to get your comments and hear what you have to say about this verse. And I'll step out here and let everybody introduce themselves now, and then we'll get started.
Hey everybody, Christina Irvin here. I'm in Northeast Tennessee and looking forward to this discussion today.
Good morning, everybody. Donna Allen, Raleigh, North Carolina, and I'm definitely looking forward to the discussion today. Good to see everybody.
And good morning, Chris Peters from Brandon, Manitoba, Canada. Thank you.
Dan Sisik from Las Vegas, Nevada, and again, looking forward to the conversation and glad everybody could be here to join us. We miss you, Samantha.
Hi, good morning, Chris Peters and everybody else. How you doing this morning? This is Chris Camp from Chicago area. Glad to be here. We do miss you, Samantha. We'll see you next week.
Yay, I think that was everyone. Did everyone get in there? I think so. We're also over on Mindset Mastery Collective that's our Google community, so be sure and join us over there as well. But to start this morning, would anyone like to read the verse?
That's always Dan's job. I have an audiobook, so I can't read it.
Get it. I'll get it. Hang on. 17th. If I can find it. Okay, there it is. 17th verse. With the greatest leader, make sure I'm okay. With the greatest leader above them, people barely know one exists. Next comes one with whom they love and praise. Next comes one whom they fear. Next comes one who they despise and defy. When the leader trusts no one trusts him. The great leader speaks little. He never speaks carelessly. He works without self-interest and leaves no trace. When all is finished, the people say, "We did it ourselves."
Thank you, Dan. This is a great verse, and it's a very short verse. And the one thing about this book that has sort of amazed us from the beginning is that these are just such short little pieces of wisdom. And at first we thought, oh, we'll have to do 2 or 3 per hour, per week. But sometimes we can talk for more than 1 week on one. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this one. So what do you, I'm sure we've all had leaders that were, say, more enlightened than others. There's some leaders that just push, 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 and sort of like a drill sergeant. And then there's other leaders that kind of pull you along just with their their charisma and their wisdom. So what do you guys think? And maybe who are some leaders that you admire and why?
Well, I was kind of struck, or sort of got me to really thinking, the part in the write up before the discussion before today's hangout, really thinking about the difference between leaders like Gandhi and Hitler, and I really got to thinking about, for me, one of the greatest signs of a great leader is the ability to be invisible, like the write-up was discussing, and empower others to kind of show up without them. I think it all comes down to, is it about them personally, their ego, their id, or literally is it because I love a leader. I think a leader, one of the qualities of a great leader is someone who absolutely empowers others and inspires others to ascribe to their greater selves. Because really, you already, the thing that we always talk about, you already kind of have a lot of the core what you need already inside you. And so I think a great leader is that person that can lead and inspire others to be their greater selves, to strive for being their greatest self.
I agree with you. Leaders help other people become leaders. The leaders don't really, a good leader, I don't think, really wants followers. They just want other leaders, to keep them company. Who else is going to jump out? I know you guys got stuff to say about this.
I was going to say a great leader, I think, was Ronald Reagan, who I think, in a lot of turmoil and stuff going on and things, I think he really led by a good example, by showing how you lead, not by making big threats or making big things or doing anything. He followed through on what he said, things like that. I think that was a good leader and a sign of a good leader. That he was able to get people to do things around him that may not have done them for somebody else. And, he got people mobilized and together and on the same page without, I think, making threats or, things like that. He used their best abilities along with others' best abilities to achieve something that he believed in.
My definition of a good leader would be a leader that, you took that right out of my thoughts, Catherine, in the, I think you wrote that right. Did you write the article, Catherine? Good. Exactly what popped in my head. When the mouse is away, the cats will play. Heard that all my life. Yeah, to me, I mean, being a leader, leaders always also follow other good leaders, and they always do encourage you, and to that end, they will delegate. They have that talent, that gift of saying, okay, let's organize, let's you do this or you do that, and they feel comfortable if they are away, just like parents in the book here, or in this verse. It read that. Of course, I can't hold that title as a parent, but parents are leaders. I'm a leader. Everybody on this panel is a leader, but we lead in different ways. And you don't want to say we got the great leaders. Yes, we have the great leaders, but I'm a firm believer that the great leaders definitely have followers that they could feel comfortable to delegate to, and they would look up to them, and it just makes everybody strong. It empowers and enlightens the team, the followers, the lead. All of us are in this thing together. All of us are in this melting pot together. Yeah.
I think for me, becoming an influencer and growing as much as I have, I think it's important to remember that as a leader, or I like to call it an influencer, I'm always open to receive from the people who are behind me and follow them as well. I think it's a very important balancing factor that we remember that we can learn something from our followers. Actually, we could learn more from our followers because they're going to tell us how good of a job we're doing inspiring them. So it's a give and take, give and receive all the time from both, or from the whole collective. So that's how I think about it.
I think it's interesting though. Dan kind of made me think, like it just popped in my head, and then thinking about the political environment today. I think leadership is an interesting discussion because it's kind of in the eye of the beholder, right? There are some people who say we have no leadership because they literally want somebody to A, B, C, D, E, F, G tell them what to do. There are other people who say we have no leadership because they don't want to feel controlled. And so I think that the definition of leadership and how we relate to it is very interesting. And until this very moment, I think I ever thought about how fluid it really can be. What do you think, Catherine?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because I was thinking best skills of a leader is being able to deal and communicate with so many different people and different personality types. And because you can say something to one person one way, and it's like you just jive, you both just get it, and you know exactly what you're talking about. And then you could say that same thing to somebody else, and they could like fly off the handle at, they could take offense to it. So you kind of have to learn how to be really fluid, like you said, and just flow between people. And I think politicians are fascinating. Like I don't study them, and I'm not a TV watcher, and I like dropped out of high school, so I'm historically challenged. But I have watched, some documentaries about different time periods, like the 60s and 70s and stuff, and a lot of it was political, and it's so interesting to me. You could not pay me enough, to do that job. They're under such incredible stress, and although people always blame them for things not growing right, it's not always in the political system, at least it's not always up to them per se. Like the president just can't do anything that he wants. Congress is involved, and there's different rules in place, dictatorship and a Hitler situation. But it's interesting how some leaders just seem to have that gift that they can communicate with anyone and immediately know how not to rile them, know how to uplift them, how to take a bad situation and turn it around so that it's uplifting and everybody feels good. It's always a win-win. I think a good leader always makes win-win situations out of things, even if it's a learning situation. You know what I mean?
I was going to jump out and kind of go with another thought where Christina, like I said, I started off with the political end of it, but I'm going to go now to us as being entrepreneurs, and a lot of us have team members or team people that we're working with. So as our team leader, we have to learn how to lead and finagle and learn how the nuances of our team members, because like me, I'm more of a very uplifting. I can provide a lot of good building up and feedback and stuff, and good know-how on how to do certain things, but other things I'm not so good at. And I like my leaders to instill in me the same way I instill in others, which I don't get that a lot of times from my leaders. So then there's that disconnect, and I'm like, why can't you help me, or why can't you teach me, or why can't you help me, get to where I want to get in the way I need you to help? And it's not anything really wrong with them. It's in how the differences in how we are, and learning to grow ourselves and expand ourselves to be that type of leader to where we can say, oh, this is how they are. Let me try and change my approach so I can better help them and be proactive in helping them in the way and in the language they need, that they understand, so they can take the thought process and say, oh, that's how you do it. I'm learning that also as in my accounting position, um, watching some of my supervisors and bosses, how they've changed their approach to how they handle me, because I don't speak the same language as my personal supervisor. He's very techie and very linear, and I'm not linear at all. I'm not. I'm everywhere. So I'm learning those things and getting better at it still. But once again, with your teams and stuff, every single person is different, and how big your team is depends on how you grow your people that are right with you, that you first work with, that bring their people in. So how you grow them, and how then they in turn grow their downline and stuff. So I think that's how I'm looking at it more and trying to look at it more.
Definitely. I think leadership, I mean, these are skills that can be learned. Yes, there are like born leaders that are just at 2 years old, they're a leader, but for the rest of us out here, thankfully, there are many programs available out there that teach leadership skills, or, masterminds like this where we touch on different things. And we've talked many times about personality colors, and I won't go into that right now, but it is definitely learning personalities, whether you look at personality colors or whether you study the way that we did it in college with the test with the 4 letters. I can't remember what that test was. There's lots of different
Myers-Briggs.
There you go, Myers-Briggs. Thank you. There's lots of different ways of looking at personalities, but I think whatever way you choose, it's a good thing to study if you want to be a leader, because that helps you interact with, because we're all so different, but there are some common we can take advantage of and help us get through to people, or not offend them, at least, anyway.
Another interesting way of thinking about it, Dan, when it comes to entrepreneurship. I was an athlete when I was younger, and a lot better in shape and everything. In college, I went to college on a full basketball scholarship, and one of the first things that experience taught me literally was about the leadership, and speaking about different leadership styles and everything. And I think sort of, Dan, you brought up more the mechanics, the technical side of the leadership thing. But certainly, I'm sure you guys have heard before, the best leaders are actually the people who know how to follow the best. And I find in an entrepreneurial situation, particularly in network marketing, direct sales, MLM kind of environments, that oftentimes what we are taught is leadership really isn't truly the sorts anyway. There's a system, right, that is set out, and what we're basically indirectly told and taught is if you don't follow this system exactly like I say, then you're not a leader, and if your team isn't big, you are not a leader. And I personally, not to be, I disagree sort of with you a little bit on that perspective, and I disagree with leadership on that. And in a lot of ways, that's a matter of being coachable, right? And that's a matter of a lot of different things, and it doesn't necessarily subscribe to one's level of leadership or their ability to grow that leadership. Um, and the people that I find who have successful, truly duplicating businesses are people who actually look for those greatest qualities in their team, and they help develop those greatest qualities, and they ensure that people understand you don't have to actually do this ABC exactly like me. Like, maybe we have a system, but your way of stepping through that system is going to be different because it doesn't go to that, because what I do doesn't necessarily subscribe to your strengths. Let's find your strengths and figure out how we can apply your strengths to this system. Now that is leadership. That's teaching. That's in a lot of ways being invisible too, allowing a person to trial and error and kind of find their way and just guide them versus dictating is the difference. And I think too many people come into entrepreneurship with a mindset of wanting to be told exactly what to do. And so they blame their so-called leaders for not leading them, when in fact they're looking for a dictator. They're looking for what they had in their job. You can go take your first break at 10:15 and you can take your lunch at 12:30, and they're looking for that in entrepreneurship, and it's just not the same thing. So I sort of have a little bit of different perspective on that, I think.
Well, I think what I was trying to get into is that as the leader, you have to learn how your team members are, and I was trying to get into that. You build in and find their strengths and work with them in their strengths, but you have to also be able to communicate with them too on a level that works so that they understand what you're trying to help them with. Because if you can't speak the same language, like me and and I'm using my job, but I'm using this as a case in point. My direct supervisor, he gets frustrated with me because I do not speak the same way he speaks. So when I say something, he has a hard time understanding what I'm saying. And he's not mad at me or anything. He's just frustrated because it's not coming through in the conduit that he understands. So therefore, he's not understanding where I'm coming from. So, and then vice versa, when he comes back at me, he's speaking from his way of how he speaks or how he thinks, and it doesn't flow into how my mind speaks. So then there's that little bit. So it's learning and growing and expanding out of that, so that way when you are effectively communicating with your team members and stuff, you're communicating in a way so that way you can find their strengths and that you can build on those strengths. I agree. I don't think any system is perfect, and I don't like being dictated on saying I have to do it this way, because I'm not you, and I'm not, it doesn't play in my strength that way. But we can find the strengths in those things that work for me, so that way I can still produce. And that's why I've had problems sometimes with some of the past leaders I've dealt with. It wasn't so much doing the work, it was the communication to help find what best suited, so I could know what, help me see what worked best for me so I could grow that. That's where I was coming from. So I agree with you wholeheartedly, basically, on what you were saying, that you got to, find the strengths.
Do you think, though, that, and I'm a different kind of bird, let's just put it like that. Like, for example, if I'm not really getting my manager, just this week, my manager was saying something, and I wasn't really getting what she was saying, but my way of dealing with that was, just so that I understand exactly what you're saying, or I'm hearing you say this, because there's a little extra information coming in that's confusing me. Let me make sure that I'm on the same page. I still think it's a matter of individuals and how they I think the screen, somebody might have double clicked, boxed Christopher, but I think there's a different way on how to sort of, I don't know. I think so often we're looking for leadership outside of ourselves rather than personal responsibility and accountability for leadership.
Also, Christina, that's exactly my thoughts as well, because we have to, as followers, You know, we have to respect our leaders. Some of them, you know, you got to have a leader and you got to have followers. And again, going back to earlier what I said, followers follow other leaders. In order to become a leader, you have to be a follower. So no, we're not children anymore. So and everybody is, you talk about entrepreneurship, everybody is an entrepreneur, but see, we're born with that. But see, most people, they don't, what they won't do, they won't develop that skill, and they won't, you know, and it's not so much as you got the greats of all of them out here, and then there's one part in the verse there. It said you got some that they will edify to the highest, and then you got some there. I can't remember just how it was there, and then you got some. It's sort of like they first praise that leader. Now follow what I'm saying, because you know, when I speak, you know, I don't like to toot. I'm a person, I don't like to toot my own horn. Someone says, well, you're too comfortable. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm very uncomfortable because you know, it's easy for people to throw that out there, and they say, you're very comfortable. Well, I'm comfortable with me, but I'm uncomfortable with what I have to do and what I feel like I need to do as a leader. And yes, I do label myself, but I'm not the average type typical leader. I'm not. I'm say like the nonchalant kind. You know, I'm not. Let's go with the flow. Let's talk about this. Now, if you don't want to follow me, that I have no pee with that. That's what I tell a person. If what I'm sharing with you in the type of a realm of something on the side or a project, that's fully fine with me. But let me point you to a leader that I know will follow you. Will help you. You can follow that leader, and they will lead you in the right way, and they will help you. And if they don't, then they got, you know, you just keep edifying. Take it away from yourself. That's the best way to do it. But also realize your strengths. But again, getting back to that, some people, they do like our good master. They follow him, they praise him, they holla Hosanna and jump all up and down, you know. And then all of a sudden, when things don't go their way, you can look at that in life. Either way, you know, either way you will look at it. Then all of a sudden they're ready to dig a hole 6 inches and just cover it, put them up and do away with them. I don't know. That just kind of went. That rubbed me this week. But delegate. Leaders, good leaders, they delegate. And like you said earlier, Christine, they watch. They don't turn their back on their followers. They get back there and they say, hey, let's see what this person over here, you know, just like this good example, Samantha's away now. Well, she trusts that this can carry on without her. That's just one good example. I'll leave it on that one now. Okay.
So I think you're bringing up a couple of good points. Am I correct in understanding or hearing you be saying that, A, leadership doesn't always have to mean that you're in the forefront. You can lead in your own kind of role, in your own position. You can lead from the back. You can lead from the middle. You can lead from the front. That's one thing, right? And also maybe also leadership is one of those things where you identify your personal contributions and the willingness to step up with what you can personally provide as your strength. That's leadership as well. So maybe also recognizing or helping us frame, again, further supporting the notion that leadership doesn't always mean the head of something. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yeah, that kind of made a lot of sense with me. This is it's kind of a loaded topic. First thing that came up with me was it applies in a lot of different areas. You know, it applies from like work, politics, business. I wrote religion, spirituality. So you have leaders in all these different areas. You know, so it kind of means different things in different areas. I immediately saw the politician and some people who were very like sort of spiritual leaders. I was thinking particularly of Mother Teresa and Martin Luther King, because it said, you know, people who are not, let's see, they're people who barely people who barely no one knows exists. You know, it's not like they're known so much during their life. They're quiet. They teach by example. You know, it's kind of interesting. So, and when it comes to like leading and following, like sometimes in religion or something, because the role of leader can be such a, it's kind of a loaded term, you know, follower or a leader, right? You know, but in the role of ordinary dealings, for the most part, you know, and some people, they don't want to follow anything, and that's good too, to be a self leader. And at the same time, like you can be like a student and there can be like a teacher, but you don't necessarily have to think of them as your leader while they could be your teacher, you know, especially in certain areas. Now, there may be some spiritual or religious contexts where you do think of them as your leader. But, you know, let's see. I was noticing this post, and there's a third paragraph, and it was making me think of this dichotomy that happens in religion and spirituality. It was here by a comment by Sandy. This, I'm quoting here, this verse also reminded me of leaders who generate a following and are so loved. Meanwhile, they are manipulating many people. We must know what a leader's motive is. It is, if it is ego-filled, more to serve the leader rather than the people that love them so much. You know, so I've seen both people who have millions of students and people who are just as powerful, who barely anybody knows about in spirituality. And then, you know, there's all kinds of teaching and business relationships to this also. Now I'm just spitting words, so I'll stop.
Yeah, that's a good point, though, Chris, because one of my mentors always talks about literally, don't mention my name. And I really do think you were talking about Mother Teresa and Martin Luther King and you know, even Gandhi. They had this ability, literally, it wasn't about them or what they were looking for. And so one of the marks for me of a great leader is they're really, it comes down to influence, and their influence, you know, decades later is obvious. Dan, going back to your example of entrepreneurship, I think sometimes what we do also is confuse leadership with influence. I think we confuse the difference. And some leaders have the ability to influence people, right? And that's one way. But there's different kinds of leaderships. I mean, there's thought leaders, and thought leaders just pose a question and encourage you to explore that question, right? So we put a lot on leaders, our political leaders, our social leaders, our church leaders. We put a lot on leaders. We put all this responsibility on leaders. That a lot of it's false, and we don't sort of mirror. We don't look in the mirror, and I think that's another thing that I've come to understand for a strong leader is the ability to have that mirror put up in front of them, and not and respond to it accordingly, and it not be with anger or malice or anything like that. But I think that's yet another you know, example of a great leader is the ability to respond when that mirror is held up and say, yeah, there's opportunity here for me to grow, or, you know, direct it accordingly. And I think so often in general people look at leadership in too small a prism, and that's where we don't kind of grow.
I also think that it's important to remember that if you have the right attitude and mindset, the right people who are going to be receptive to your skills, your knowledge and your wisdom are going to show up. And you can't lead people who say, well, I'm a realist and I only believe in this and I only believe in rationale and all that. Don't waste your time. I actually have a little bit of a story last night. I'm friends with a really good guy I've known for like 15, 20 years. And he's in a really bad situation, and I tried to introduce him to Pay Me What I'm Worth and our book club. And I've told him how much it's done for me and stuff like that, and he saw it as pitching him or whatever. And I just, by him saying that alone, I knew he wasn't open to learning. So I think that for me, I used to really try and convince people to get into personal development. Now I just don't. Because when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, and when the teacher is ready, the student will appear. And I think by adopting that philosophy for myself, that I just don't care if I help everybody. I want to help people who want to be helped, and I want to be helped by people who I'm helping. So it's a balancing act, and I've learned so much through this course. It's just incredible. The awareness I'm having from Pay Me What I'm Worth is unbelievable. And I want to teach it for the rest of my life. This is what I'm meant to do. So, and if people want to address me as a leader, that's fine, but I don't need that title. I don't need to be called a leader. I would like to be recognized as an influencer, yes, but a leader, I don't care about that. That's a label. So, anyway, that's my thoughts, guys. Thank you.
So you bring
Thank
up
you.
another good point. Oh, go ahead, Catherine, because I've been talking.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
I'm curious. I bet you'll have something good to add to what I'm getting ready to say. But Chris, you actually bring up another good point, which is I don't think leader. I think the strongest leaders, in my opinion, aren't people who are setting out to be a leader or an influencer or anything like that. They are just people who are daily doing the things, the habits, living the life to their greatest ability, to their greatest self, and they modulate how they feel necessary. But they're ever growing. They're not always perfect. There are areas that they realize I can work on, but their subscription really is not to be the leader or the influencer, but to be their greatest self.
That's right. And that's the biggest thing I learned from Pay Me What I'm Worth, as well as tolerance and compassion and allowance and exploration. So it's been incredible. And I thank you so much, Christina, for introducing this to Marcia, because I love you both so much. You know, I love everyone here too. It's just, you know, that's really what I needed. I needed to get behind something that I felt fulfilled doing, and that, you know, because I was selling health products with another company with network marketing and yada yada yada, and I'm not into that. I want to help people emotionally and spiritually, and I want to help them tap into their deepest potential and help them change their life. That's more fulfilling than selling them some product that's going to make them healthier, in my opinion. So, yep. Indeed. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, I heard Christina brought that out last year. That's interesting. You guys are talking about that book. And but yeah, I like the way you said that. Well, yeah, people have they're so much looking for that label, and that's exactly right, because a label, you go putting a label on me. Now that don't mean I'm going to rebel. I think in the book it talks about how people don't like rules, or I believe that's kind of tailoring in on that fact that don't come putting a label on me, because you start putting a label on me, then I'm going to be very, very uncomfortable with that, because it's just like you said earlier there, Christina and Chris, and each one of you touched in on it there. You want to get in here and just follow good people, follow the where you're going to get that nourishment, that support, and not only that, you're going to give that to them, and you're going to you want to contribute. That's the word I'm trying to find. Contribute. It's not that, oh, whoa, you know, look at me, I'm up here on a, no, none of that. Throw that out. There's too much of that stuff going on. That's why you've got actually a sense of a lot of people out here doing so much scatterness is because they're being labeled and they feel like they got to have that label. But all they got to do is just relax and when I say relax, I'm not saying get too comfortable because when I say a word, it's like reverse. If that makes any sense, if I say comfortable, what I really mean is uncomfortable. I know that probably would probably drive a professor nuts. Let's just put it that way. I'm gonna leave it on that one. Go ahead and let somebody else say something.
I was going to just kind of pose this question, and because going back to a little bit touching on Christine and Chris, and now what you just said, Donna, is I think a lot of us don't like labels, but yet we still want a label put on us that we see the label that we see for ourselves. Like, oh, I'm a great leader, or I'm great this, or, you know, we all have a picture of ourselves, I think, if we're honest, of how we see ourselves, and we put a label on ourselves. But when other people come and put labels on us that we don't think that we like or agree with or don't fit with us, that's when we get rebellious or different or fight back. And I think that's, you know, because I know I don't like it. I see myself a certain way, and I like, you know, like I kind of like that picture and label I put, but it may not be the right label either. I may have put the wrong label on myself too. You know, I'm trying to be as fair and honest and open about this as I can, but I think if we get down to it, because we're all looking for that space and purpose and place where we feel like somehow we fit in somewhere out here, but yet don't box me in based on what your labels are, even though sometimes I think the way people perceive us and see us is probably more accurate than what we see ourselves, but yet we don't like those things. So it's finding that balance and going back to the personal development and growing and getting out of ourselves and building and going from that, so that way we can become the effective leader like in the book, and the one that where, going back, I think leading by example is the best way to lead, and by quietly doing and building other people and helping them build themselves up to the, going back to Christine, the best person that they can be. It goes back and is espoused by like Martin Luther, Mother Teresa, you know, Gandhi. When you look at them, you think of all the good and all the things and how they built up a nation. They lifted the plight of the poor, the poverty. You know, Martin Luther with his difference and thoughts on um, religion and things, and how we, you know, helped bring those things back, you know, into, I guess, in alignment, so to speak, or raising raising the awareness and stuff of things like that. And that's kind of where I'm thinking about this and looking at it from a reverse angle.
Question, Dan. Would you agree that in looking for a title for yourself, you want whatever title it is that you would hope for yourself? Would you agree that that in some way kind of limits or caps off some of that potential that you do have? I mean, in fact, it almost sets up a situation of literally you taking effort for the external validation or the external confidence or the acceptance or the whatever it is externally. I don't know. I'm just curious. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it goes back into a lot of what we're built up and played into as when we're little, as what we hear from our parents, from things like that we carry with us and internalize. And then as we get older, it's hard to change that, even though we might want to, and we're building and growing. Like I said, I've grown and learned and changed so much in the time I've been involved in network marketing, direct, you know, all that. But I've grown personally, development-wise, by delving into a lot of the personal development and things, and changing and challenging some of my thought processes. So yeah, I think we do limit ourselves, but I think we're so comfortable in that, and that we get so caught up in that, and the perceptions and the realities, or trying to keep up with so and what everything else, like we always go back to ego and trying to worry and keep up with what everybody else does, that, like I said, based on what we're taught from when we're little, you want to, we always hear, oh, we want you to grow up to be a doctor, we want you to grow up to be a lawyer, we want you to grow up to be this, that, a lot of times parents don't say, oh, I want you to grow up to be this artist, even though we have great artists, and out of that, people do go out and then show their art and their, Van Gogh, all them, brought us beautiful pictures and things like that. But I'm sure when they were little, unless the parents realized that they had somebody special, a prodigy or something, most of the time you don't hear that from parents. So then so I think that's where we get it. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm saying as we get older and as we grow and dive into ourselves, then we can break through some of those labels that we put on ourselves. But I think a lot of us are comfortable with the labels we put on ourselves.
I just think you just said the key there.
Right, right. I think we can have these labels sometimes from our past, from childhood or whatever, and then as we grow, sometimes we have other labels or things that do identify with parts of our achievement that make us feel confident in who we are. But I think it can also at the same time be a limiting thing. So I think it's, let's say if you become a doctor or a nurse or a certain thing, or a graduate or something, well, that's part of what you've achieved as an identity. So that may be a positive, that's a positive agreement with who you are, but if it's, some title or something, it could relate to who you are, but I can obviously be quite limiting as well.
Yeah, I think good leaders, or the leaders that I think of as good leaders, one of the things I've noticed about them is they all have a mentor, if not several. They all realize the importance of and doing the inner work to get themselves to a place, because you can't be a good leader and a good communicator and get along with all these people until you've actually gone into your own shit. Excuse the language there, but that's just the way it is, until you've gone into your own stuff, because if you haven't done that, then as you interact with people, you're going to be reacting to people because you've got all this inner stuff you haven't done. So I think a good leader has to do the inner work, and the first thing that they have to do is learn how to lead themselves. They have to develop self-discipline, and they have to learn sort of by trial and error, or hopefully with the help of a mentor, how life works. They have to kind of figure it out. They have to go through the struggles so that they understand what people are going through, so that they can relate to them, on a really relate to them because they've actually lived through it, right? So I think good leaders deal with their own baggage, so to speak. They get rid of it so that they're not spewing it out on people and blaming them for it. Christina, what you said earlier about actually two different thoughts popped in right at one time. I'll go with this other one and then I'll come back to you. Chris, I loved that you read Sandy's comment there, because I made in the post the comparison of Gandhi and Hitler, and I don't want to get into a whole discussion about Gandhi and Hitler, but what I want to point out is, although many people may not agree with what Hitler was doing, he was really an awesome leader. I mean, he was able to lead a lot of people who were so devoted to him that they would do horrendous things you know, to humanity. So, but his initial, like what he wanted to do, what his intention to do was different than kind of how everything turned out. But anyway, I won't go into that. So Christina, you brought up, oh gosh, I think I just lost him. And another good thing about a leader is being able to say, I did something wrong, like admitting that they have fault, or being humble enough to say that they, you know, don't know everything. That's why having a mentor, I think when you find a leader that points to other leaders and sort of shows by example, you know, I don't know it all. I learned this from this person. I learned this from this person. I think that's a very good quality to see in a leader. And there was another point in Sandy's, let me see if I can get over there. We were talking about, I had mentioned something in my comment about, or actually in the blog post about being rebellious. There's a certain rebellious aspect, I guess, that I think leaders have. Not all the time rebellious, but I think, you know, you have to have that certain little bit of rebelliousness to step out on your own and step into your power and figure out what your beliefs are, you know, not just be a sheeple, but actually figure out what your beliefs are so that you can stand on those. And sometimes, oh, that's what it was. You were talking about sometimes, especially in companies like network marketing companies, people blame their leaders because their business isn't going well. So when you're in a business like that, that's what you have to understand, like you're the leader, you're the CEO of your business, and yes, your sponsor or whoever can certainly guide you, but is being a good leader spoon feeding people and giving them the answers to everything and being at their beck and call 24 hours a day? Not really. I mean, some people, that's what they think of. Oh, yeah, that's a good leader. That's what I want. I want somebody to tell me what to do. I want some.
Is Catherine frozen on your end, or is it just
Yeah,
me?
she's frozen.
Okay. Well, we're coming up towards the end of the hour, so I guess we should start wrapping up, and I guess she'll pop back in when she can. But anybody want to start off with their closing thoughts?
Yeah, she was saying some good stuff there, and it comes back around to, yeah, that word delegate just comes strong in my spirit when I read this. Leaders have a good quality of delegating. That's a person, leader per se. I don't want to put a label, but delegate. I don't know. That's come in my spirit real strong. Delegate.
Yeah, it looks like she just dropped off, so maybe she lost her internet or something. Um, it was interesting because this kind of conversation kind of went kind of different than how I was seeing it start out. But I got a lot of value out of it. I actually took a lot of notes, so surprising. But because I think there's so many aspects and facets of being a leader that, you know, each leader brings and employs their own attributes and strengths and qualities into what makes them the great leader, that you can't necessarily quantify any one particular strength or quality you have to look at the person and who they are and what they're about and what they are leading, you know, um, and the purpose behind why they're leading. Um, and then I think maybe, for myself, it has to go back to, okay, what is my core reason for what I'm doing and why, and have I maybe lost track of some of that, for lack of a better way of how to say it, and to know that I do have strengths as a leader. I can be a leader and am a leader, and but at the same time, I don't see myself as a leader too. So, in that, this was an interesting conversation this week, and I got a lot out of it. Especially a lot of the points you said, Christina. Christina, I appreciate it.
Chris Peters, you want to do your final thoughts?
Is he still on the call?
I think we lost Chris too, but we have Christopher. He's still here.
Okay, I'll give a final thought. I was thinking about how leaders are teachers. And to be a teacher, you have to be a learner. And the best way you teach is by example. And by example is by action. And to become a great teacher, you have to be a great student. And so if you're really a great student through action, then your teaching is connected to being a student because you respect the learning process. One thing that was connecting really a lot with me was thinking how I had first just come onto this morning mastermind, and I don't even think we we're doing Wayne Dyer at the beginning, but Wayne Dyer is a great example because he was really a neat teacher, and he did not have a huge following or act like an outward leader, but he was a really good example of that because he walked what he did. He walked his talk. So he was a really neat guy. That resonated with me a lot. Thanks a lot, everyone. Appreciate being on here today.
Good stuff. This has been a great discussion. I think for my final thoughts, maybe I'll just try to weave in a few things. One of my greatest experiences over the past year has literally been that personal growth in my leadership. And I think there's different levels of leadership. And for me to grow to the next level of my leadership required me to, Christopher, as you were just saying, be willing to learn a little bit more and go deeper for myself and explore for myself. Going back to some of the things that Catherine was saying and weaving in some things that what Donna was saying, literally for me, and I'll just put this out there for our watchers and for each of us to even continue to explore is I know I've said it different weekends, but literally understanding that the things that keep you from that ultimate level of leadership and living your highest self, a lot of times, Dan, like you said, that the stuff from the childhood that holds you back is the doubt, the guilt, the shame, the worry, the fear that over time continues to perpetuate. For me, the greatest gift has been literally being liberated from that, in not worrying about all of that. That's not my driver. So what I would say to everyone is just really get to a point, work on getting to exploring yourself enough to get to that point where you're not looking for the validation externally. You're no longer holding on to the sort of ongoing thing of beating yourself up because you aren't something that you think you should have been or didn't achieve something that you would had hoped that you would have. And as far as leadership, I'll go ahead and end it there because I see Catherine's back. And Catherine, if you'll go ahead and provide your final thought and take us on out.
Sorry about that. My computer shut down. I don't know where I was at, but and I don't want to repeat whatever's just been said in my absence, but basically what I was trying to say is that people blame leaders for not leading them, and yet sometimes they are leading them by not spoon feeding them. By, like, I heard someone complain about their sponsor the other day because they said, well, when I ask a question, all they do is give me a video link, and that's not leading. Well, yeah, that is actually, because you're teaching them where the information is so that that is actually duplicatable. So sometimes we think we're not being led when actually we're being led quite well. And something that Sandy pointed out in her post, and I did too, about being rebellious. Sometimes it takes somebody doing something to us that we don't like, you know, that causes that rebelliousness. That's how we learn, is by bumping up against stuff like that, you know. So anyway, we're at the top of the hour, and just so glad everybody could join us. Sorry for the technical problems, but that's the way it goes in live Hangout world. And we hope that you will go over to SaturdayMorningMastermind.com, scroll down past the blog post, and please put your comments in there and let us know. You can also find us over on our Google community, Mindset Mastery Collective. And if you need the book that we're studying, there's actually a link in the blog post there where you can order that. And we just hope that you'll join us and let us know what you're thinking about these verses, and how, you know, if anything we said today gave you an aha moment. And we hope to see you next week. And hopefully Samantha will be back, and she'll just be glowing from all the grandma love going on. So we love you guys, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks. Love you guys. Thanks a lot.